Hey, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I'm your host, John McDavitt, and this is the place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. If you are watching us on YouTube, you can see that we are in Malaysia today. That's not true. We're just in my backyard, and this awesome person sitting next to me is a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of my family's. And it's funny because, I met Chris, I was about 28, 27? How long was it before the mural? It was just a year before the mural.
Yeah. You
And
were
that was
in your
99,
mid
we
to late
finished
20s.
98. So 97. So I would have been 26. And Chris was younger than that. And how did we meet? How did that begin?
I had worked with another mutual friend, Dave. I had done some painting for he and his wife, and through chatting with Dave, he found out more about my background and said, "Hey, I've got a really good friend who's trying to get into the mural business. Would you mind talking to him?" And I said, "Absolutely." So that was the connection.
And you were faux finishing at the time because
Right.
you were doing their house or whatever.
Right.
So we met I remember where we met because we met at
Applebee's.
Applebee's. Yeah, I couldn't think of the name of it. Is Applebee's still a thing?
I don't think so.
I don't know. So anyway, we met at the Applebee's, and I remember thinking, this woman's going to think I'm crazy because I was just so direct about wanting to. Because here was the deal. I had gotten this big mural job, and it was like, I would say that was over 100 feet of mural, right, at the library.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fantastic. I was thrilled, but it was also, oh boy, I got this job. Like, how am I going to do this? And so I remembered I'd spoken with Dave, and I spoke with another friend of ours, another artist friend, and I ran the idea by them that I was going to do murals residentially to figure out my process. I was going to have other people pay for my education, but still give them beautiful work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And both of them said, I don't think that's going to work. But there was something in my gut that was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So then we met, and was I bold enough to ask you for your connections? Is that how we did it?
I think we talked about it, and I had 2 or 3 different interior designers I was working with at the time, and you gave me some pictures and cards, and I passed that along to them, gave you their contact info, and I think you did do a couple of murals, I think.
I did murals all year that year.
Working through both of them.
It was crazy, and they were, some were in really high-end areas, some were in kind of upper middle, and it was great. And did you help me on any of those murals?
Yeah. There was the one in Naperville. Remember the sewing room where we quilted everything?
I do
with all
remember
the
that one. Yeah.
You did the stained glass in the kitchen for
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what other ones. There were a couple of different ones.
Yeah. So how did you get to the faux finishing part?
How did I land there?
Yeah, how did you get there?
So I always wanted to do something artistic. Didn't quite have the confidence I needed, like when I was really young. So did accounting for a decade. Then when I was home with little kids, my sister, who's also artistic, started out doing stenciling for people when that was popular, and then that migrated into the faux finishing as that came on the scene. And every time I talked to her, she was up until 2 a.m. the night before drawing and cutting stencils for a job she had the next day. So I said, why don't you let me do that? I can draw and cut the stencils. You can just go and do the on-site work, because I was home with little kids and I didn't have that flexibility. So that was how I started. And she also was an x-ray tech. So the first stencils that we did were all on x-ray film. So when the hospital would throw them out, she'd grab them because it was just about the perfect weight.
Yeah.
And it was cheap. It was free. So we would draw and cut them on those, and then little by she was so busy at the time because faux finishing really started to take off that I started working part-time with her as my time allowed, and then eventually there was enough work where I split off and went on my own.
And now, we were just talking about this a minute ago, because years ago Chris said to me, hey, whatever you do, just take me along for the ride. I'm happy to be in the background and to ride your coattails. And I was like, I'm not built that way, and I always thought, really? Like, I almost wondered, really? Is that really what you want? But here you are, like, the first thing you did with your sister was you're in the background and you're helping her out. And you're doing, I mean, it's incredibly important work for her to set her up to succeed. But then you're really good doing your own thing, too.
No, I always liked... Again, maybe it goes back to the confidence levels when I first started out, that I felt more comfortable in a supportive role.
Yeah. That
I knew that I could handle that and I could do it well. Because if I'm going to do a job, if I can't do it the best I can do, I don't want to do it. So that was a comfort level for me. It's like, I can come in, I can be your support person. I can take care of all the little odds and ends. I do think that there's a battle in my head between the right and the left brain. There's the creative side, but then there's this other side that says everything has to be in order. It has to be documented. It has to be billed. It has to be taken care of. And I need to address both of those sides to be sane. So it just works. But I don't think that because of that struggle in my head, I don't know that I have the rock star quality creative aspect that you have, that where you can just walk in and boom, it's there. So
well, I'm glad it looks like that, because it doesn't always feel like that.
Although there have been a few jobs where do you remember when you bid the mural at Brookfield Zoo?
Yes.
Because we went in there and we were like checking out the pachyderm house, and there were so many details. It's like, what kind of paint do we use in here? Because we don't want to kill the elephants, and how are we going to reach up to the ceilings? And there were so many things. And when you went in there and you talked like you knew everything that we needed to do, and we walked out, and I said, John, how are we going to do this? And you said, I have no idea. But I admired your confidence, because you always had it. It's like, we'll figure that part out later.
Yeah, I don't know if competence comes before confidence or after, or if they just walk side by side.
Maybe a little faith.
Because, I don't know. I just always figured, if you do this too, though, you've done it on your projects where it's like, you don't necessarily know the path to get there, but kind of know how to figure out how to do it.
And some of that just comes with doing.
Yeah.
Because I've had several projects where I've been, something isn't going the way you want it to. And I remember one where I had one of the designers was hyperventilating, and I'm like, stop, it's going to be fine. She's like, but look at this. I'm like, you just keep the homeowner away. I can fix this.
Yeah.
But give me permission to change the color slightly. Okay, just fix it. It's like, okay, go. It's like you figure out ways to make it work.
And you're always even. Like, you're really, really even. Now, I know that's not always true internally, right?
Well, yeah, everybody has that.
But I know on jobs that we've been on, and so we worked on these murals together, and then we worked on a big mural together. And it was actually 3 murals in one location, and I had another person in working with us who was a faux finisher, and I don't want to say I didn't have no idea what I was doing, but I was figuring it out. I was kind of figuring out how I knew what things needed to look like, but I was still figuring out how to direct people, and you were just a necessary delight to have there. Because Chris would, I could set her off somewhere, or if I didn't know exactly where to go, I might just ask you, what do you think you want to do today or should do today? And you would know. Or you'd walk around and look, and and then be like, well, how about this? And I'm kind of looking at that, and then we could almost decide in the moment together. And it was really cool for a very green muralist to have a partner in that sense. I mean, it was really good to be able to, first off, know that you were going to show up.
It's a big thing. You got to show up.
Second off, know that like if I was frustrated or challenged with something, it wasn't going to be you. and I just trusted you kind of with the keys to the mural too. I mean, that was easy.
Well, I think one of the things that you and I have always shared, and for as young as you were when we first started, not everybody has the skill to know what to say or not to say in front of a client.
Ooh, that's really good.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
If you're bringing somebody in, you want to make sure that they're not going to do anything that's going to compromise your relationship with the client.
I had somebody on a particular job who was working with me, and they went into the washroom of the building we were working at, and they wrote some unpleasant graffiti in there, and then they told me about it, and I remembered being really frustrated with it, and then kind of gently but directly say, you need to go take that down because it's inappropriate. And it was somebody who I don't think I ever worked with again after that, because their highs were too high and their lows were too low. And, to your point, being able to know what to say or what not to say, and then to be trustworthy in the midst of that is huge. Is so huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, almost every job you're on, sometimes things don't go exactly the way you want them to go.
Sometimes.
There's surprises. But knowing how to handle those surprises when they come out, maybe that's the calm you were talking about earlier. It's like I might be screaming on the inside, like, oh shoot, how do I fix this? But the presence you have to have in front of the client is like, it's okay.
Yeah.
This is going to be fine.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure anybody you're working with has that same kind of demeanor.
Yeah.
Or just doesn't say anything and lets you be the front man.
And it's true, because it is going to be fine.
It is.
I've never had a situation where it isn't. It might feel like you're teetering, but you always seem to get there if you stick with it, right?
Yeah.
Have we ever had a disaster? I don't think so.
Are you talking about the time when you dumped all the brown paint on my head, or?
Yeah, it was.
Does that not count as a disaster? I think that was the same day day your cell phone fell in the bucket of water.
Oh,
that
I remember
that. Disaster.
And I do remember the ladder on my ankle, to which I could only say, "You can move now." What did I say?
You can get off now.
You can get off now.
Get off. Get off now.
I don't know where my English went. I couldn't say this. Really, you're on my ankle.
But we were in a public place, and you couldn't say anything inappropriate, so you didn't.
So you shifted with me then. Like, there were murals that would pop up every now and then, but then you shifted into kind of the product development world with me, and I had been doing quite a bit of toy design in my mid to late 20s at this one studio with Dave, with the guy who introduced us, and I was painting a lot of their prototypes, and I was doing a lot of their design work and a little bit of sculpture here and there. And then after this mural, I bought a Mac, and after I bought the Mac, I was like, because I think it was a $3,000-something computer.
And then you had to get the software.
Which was a different world. Yeah. So I had to get the software. But I didn't know what to do with this thing once I set it up. I was like, all right, I've got it. Now what do I do? And I remembered that I plugged in, it was RGB, and I think I left the B out. and so it's like the colors were a mess, and I'm like, now this stupid thing doesn't even work. And then I started to work a little bit in Photoshop, and anyway, I was getting jobs with other product development companies, and that's when mock-ups started to become a thing, because I'd be working with clients who needed to show prototypes of packaging to their clients, and they wouldn't need just like 2 or 3, they'd need like 80, 100, and I was busy designing, and then I needed to output this stuff, and called Chris, do you want to do some mock-ups? And I think without even asking what they were, she said yes. And we got into a system of, at some point Chris just knew what to do, and it was great, because it was another thing that I could take and put into the hands of somebody who was reliable. And I mean, we'd be working up to the deadline on this stuff, because it was usually very tight, and we'd end up meeting in the middle, because you live, I don't know, 15 miles from me or something, and we'd meet in the middle, or you'd come over late and work for a while, and there'd even be times
we just power through.
Yeah, and just get it done.
Because you had to have them at the client the next morning, so we'd just work until they were done.
Yeah, and that was a lot of what we did. We did that at the studio too, if we'd be working on painting projects.
Oh yeah, I mean, because the deadlines there too are always tight. It's like there'd be changes, but the deadline never changed.
Right.
And decorating was always the last part of it.
Oh, it's the last.
It's like waiting for it to dry so we could pack and ship. It's like, don't pack it yet. The clear coat's not dry.
That was my first paint job for that studio, was me sitting with Dave looking over my shoulder, and then another guy looking over my shoulder, and I was painting the blue on a flounder from The Little Mermaid.
Oh, well, right.
And yeah, another flounder. And it was like an ultramarine blue up against a cadmium yellow light. Mm-hmm. And you know that yellow doesn't cover. So you got to get the blue right, because it's 1,000 layers. And Dave is saying to me, FedEx is coming in like 5 minutes, any second now. And I've got to have a gentle, smooth hand, and it's like, okay, you just got to block it out. And you could paint like that too. Like, you're really good under pressure. Why are you good under pressure?
I don't know. It just, I just get into the moment, and it's like I have a task to do and I have to finish it. And you just keep going until it's done.
Yeah.
I don't know. Cell vinyl was a godsend though.
Yeah, do you like it better than
it covered much better?
Liquitex? Yeah.
You only needed to do like 10 coats of the yellow instead of 40.
Well, and that's the other thing. You could match colors.
That is something that I do find that I'm pretty good at.
Yeah. Because I remember, learning that, and you're working back and forth, and you get these Pantone chips, right? Like, so 485 is Ronald McDonald Red. I don't even know, do they use Ronald anymore? Anyway, it's McDonald's Red. And they don't sell that in a bottle, so you got to mix it. And because it's acrylic, it dries darker than the mix. So you got to kind of have an eye and a sense for not just what goes into it, but how it's going to dry. And you're checking.
And you're matching paint colors to what ultimately is an ink color, which aren't the same things. And some colors are almost impossible to completely match.
Yeah, because it's not even a CMYK, it's a spot color
right.
that they're specially mixing. And that was another magic thing to know you could do that. So it was like you were a huge bonus to my operation. And I never... It was an unusual situation because we hold similar values. We know each other. We got to know each other's families, and you became a part of our family. And so I always explain or describe Chris as that person who, in my life and in my wife's life, we trust her so much that we trust her with our treasure, and she would babysit our son. And I mean, she might take him for a weekend if we were gonna, like, she asked for it.
Volunteered.
Yeah. And it was such a wonderful thing for us to have in our life, but also, there was no question. It wasn't like, oh, are we worried? Are we concerned? And when you trust somebody like that, the business side of it is, it's just a given. It was so easy. And I was going through a really tough time after I'd gotten a big mural, and I was having some really, life was changing for me relationally, and I was depressed, and I hadn't really felt a depression like that, right? No energy, and I was tired and just kind of lackluster. And I had this mural to get done. And I remember I talked to the client and I said, hey, something's going on in my life. I expressed to them what it was. They were very understanding. And then I called Chris. And Chris was going to work on this mural anyway. But I would come in and I would kind of set up the day. And I mean, I literally might work an hour or something. And then I would tell Chris, hey, I'd like to get this done today. And then we might talk through some technique. We might not. And I'd leave,
yeah.
And I'd cut you loose, and you were a lifesaver on that. That was really cool.
I think one of the best compliments I'd ever gotten from you was on that mural, because I had stayed and I worked on a bunch of stuff, and the next day you came in, and I pointed out this one area to you, and you're like, oh yeah, I did that yesterday. I'm like, no, you didn't. I did that, and I was so excited. And that was it after the mural that we did, the Jungle Mural, where I had come in, we, together we blocked out all the colors, and then the last week you were there alone and you just airbrushed all the highlights, and I mean, you just made that whole mural come alive. And when I went to see it when it was all done, I mean, I was obviously impressed, but I was saddened at the same time, and you're like, why? I'm like, because it doesn't look like I was even here. And you're like, that's not true.
Yeah, you were there. That was, what episode was it? That was about dealing with a difficult client. I'll put that episode in the description. But it was this big 40-foot wide by 16-foot tall mural. The client made it very challenging up front. And then that cut the window down of time we had. So we had to work out a manner in which we get coverage, because when you're airbrushing, even if you're spray paint, we can't spray paint with a big gun, the kind of control we needed, and we had to get paint on the wall before the airbrush.
Right.
So we worked out a system. I don't even remember how we worked it out. I remember doing 3 feet sections, mm-hmm. 3 or 4 foot, because especially when I was up high, I was on
You're on the scaffold.
We had a scaffold and then a 12-foot ladder on the scaffold.
Which was a little shaky for
your
size.
So how was the mural taller than that then?
It was 16 feet.
It was 16 feet. So I was on scaffold is 6 foot?
Probably the 6 foot with the... I think you tried the second stage of the scaffold and you didn't like it because it was too wobbly.
Well, it wouldn't fit between that little hut that they put there,
yeah.
So I couldn't get up on it.
But that's... I was working underneath you when the paint got dumped.
It was that job.
Yes.
That
and there
job...
were little handholds in the boards of the scaffold so that you could pull the board off, and you dumped it right down through the hole under me.
What did you say? Did you... Hey!
Yeah. What are you doing?
Well, and then I remember I'd get up on that ladder, and I think I had to bring the compressor up on to the scaffold, and then I would have the airbrush and 3 bottles of paint in one hand,
and then you're trying to hold on,
and then I would walk up to the top, and then turn and just spray with one color, spray with the next color, spray with the next color, and then move on.
Right.
And I think I did it in three levels, and you were just filling in all the gaps on that, because we had
putting all your paint can lids back on.
Yes, keeping it clean.
30 quarts going at any given time.
Because I'm like the kind of guy where, I mean, I'm not destructive messy,
no.
but I'll the crayons go on the floor, and it's like, okay, I'll use. So there's order in my chaos, and then Chris comes behind, and she's kind of cleaning things up. She's cleaning the brushes and soaping the brushes and putting the lids on nice. Where I'm not as worried about that.
That's on this one, not that one.
Yeah. So I mean, that was amazing to have you on that. And so I mean, between that and between the corporate work, which really the corporate work became the larger part of my focus for the last 20 years. And you've always been there. And then you've always been there to bounce finances off of too. Like if I have a mural or I have something and I'm trying to figure it out, I might text Chris and say, hey, this is going on here. I'm curious. What do you think? And sometimes I'll give you the price I'm thinking, sometimes I won't. Mm-hmm. But I can bounce it off of you, and it's really helpful.
Or just, I mean, throughout the years too, we've had different ideas about different business things to try, and we've always bounced things back and forth. And it was always nice to have you. You were the first artist, you and Dave were the first artists I've ever met that were making a good living out of doing something that you truly loved. And I think for too long, I only believed that you could be a fine artist or a commercial artist, and that there was nothing in between. And to me, a commercial artist, was somebody who works like in an ad agency, not a freelance guy who can support a family.
Yeah.
So that was a huge revelation for me. But then just to see how, you could do all these different things, and it all seems to come together. Somehow. And I think maybe too, you were one of the people that gave me some clarity, because I always thought there was something wrong with me. Because I had this reputation of flitting from one thing to the other. Or, she's the one that can't stay in a job that long. And you just said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just creative. That's how our heads work. Because I always was looking for the next thing to try, the next thing to see. And even when I was painting, it's like, okay, I have got this product and this is what it's supposed to do. But what if I do this with it? Or what if I mix it with something else? What's going to happen, and what's the outcome going to be?
So
But you made it okay to do that.
Well, thanks. I just recorded an episode a little while ago, put it up, and it's permission to succeed. I mean, I think somehow we need permission to move forward. I mean, maybe there are people who don't, and they just kind of go do it, and they're just built a little different. But I think most people need a little like, hey, it's okay, go get them.
Yeah, and I think maybe part of it too is that more of the people that I'm surrounded with are more the engineering analytical types.
Yeah. And
they don't maybe completely understand the creative process, or they're more, it's here's the problem, you go through ABC to solve it, and it's the same every time.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. So then when someone like me comes along, they're just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, creatives can be a free radical in that world, and a little scary to people, I think. So when people were telling you that you're flitting all over,
you can't stick to any one thing.
Were you young when that? Were you like a teen, or were you older? Or?
I think it probably started in like high school age, but carried through.
Yeah.
Into adulthood.
And
I always felt that there was something wrong with me, that I got bored easily and wanted to always do. I mean, even when I was working like in an office environment, I would learn all of my job tasks, but then I would pester everybody, teach me, well, what are you doing? Show me how to do that.
Yeah.
Because I always wanted to keep learning and doing something different.
Yeah. Well, and so you're not just creative artistically, you're creative in a business sense or an entrepreneurial sense, and you're curious. And you do. I mean, Chris does my books, too. Chris is a bookkeeper and like really good with, well, like you said, you want things to be in order. You're an order maker.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, technically my degree is in accounting.
Yeah.
art classes and certificates and that too. But
Was that offensive to just call you bookkeeper?
no,
Okay. I didn't want that to be offensive. You'd tell me.
no. But you have to be careful when you talk about accountants being creative because that ends up getting you in trouble. Can't do that.
Yeah, that's not about painting by numbers. That's about
No.
putting green in one place or another.
Yeah, that's frowned upon.
Yeah. So what now? We've known each other for 30, well,
If you were 26.
25, 24, 25 years. And I've seen you grow more bold over that time.
That happens.
What do you attribute that to? They're just getting wiser, older, or
Yes.
just like, I'm not putting up with this anymore?
Yes. I think turning 40 was empowering. Turning 50 was even more so. I think I've finally gotten to the point where I'm getting comfortable with who I am and figuring out who that is. For the longest time, I think I probably spent too much time trying to please others, my parents, my teachers, my whoever. And you get to a point where it's like, I'm tired of trying to always be something else. Let's see who I am. And I think that self-actualization kind of came about, just over the years, working, in the arts with you, doing other, the other work that I've done, raising my family. So it's a journey.
Yeah. You've kind of had all worlds. You've had the family. You're an incredible mom. Your kids are awesome. You and Fred have done an awesome job with your kids. And, you've got the creative career and then the numbers part of the career.
Don't ask my kid about any of their projects for school. Because anytime they had anything, it's like, well, what are you working on? And they wouldn't want to tell me. And it's like, what? I have to make a brochure. And it's like, awesome. Go get my computer. We're going to do this in Photoshop. And they're like, no. It's like, get the markers. Get the poster. Where I always had all the art supplies. So they were never phoning anything in. It all had to look like they were giving a presentation. And they had to put in the effort. It's like, awesome. We don't want to use Photoshop. We just want to do it. No, we're going to do this right.
So, what do you think, like, the big takeaway is from this for somebody?
I would say, try to find the things that bring you joy to do, because your whole life is a long time. Like I said, for me, it took a long time to figure out that I need to address the analytical side, but also the creative side to be a whole person. And that's okay. I don't have to live in one world or the other. I tried to do that, and it was a struggle. Find people to surround yourself with who you trust, that have similar values to you. Find a mentor. I think those things are important. You told me one time too that if you are passionate about something and you were passionate about your art, that to only take jobs that will further that goal. Because otherwise you're just kind of spinning your wheels, burning time, not doing what you love. Yeah. And that's always stuck with me.
Yeah. That's from my dad. My dad passed that on through me to you.
Wise.
Yeah. And I would say maybe the other part of this episode is when you find somebody that is, and you kind of addressed this a minute ago, but when you find somebody who's like-minded, who's trustworthy, who is competent and capable at what it is they do, man, hold on to them, build relationships with them, and look for opportunities to work with them and to hang out with them. And because and learn. And I mean, my career I've had a really good career. I really love the stuff that I've done, and still get to do. What's maybe even as good or better are the relationships that I've had throughout all of this, because the work is fine. I mean, the work is great, but if you don't have somebody to experience it with, or to laugh about pouring paint on somebody's head, or getting your ankle crushed, or I remember the one time your son set the fire alarm off. Was it Jeffrey did it? Jeffrey set the fire alarm off in the building, and we were like, oh, but we sorted that out. It's like everything's fixable. It's okay. And you end up having these wonderful stories, and we've got a ton more that we don't have time to share and probably can't share. But the laughs and it's just rich. It makes life rich. That's been, like, when I talked to you about doing this episode, I was excited to kind of remember what we did and where we've been, but also I just like seeing you. You know, I like that you're going to come over, and my son is going to be thrilled to see you, and Janine had a great conversation with you, and there's people in my life like you who just make my life richer. So
yeah, I think we clicked right from the beginning. It was just an easy friendship.
Yeah, and you kind of know. It seems like you almost kind of know where it's going to go. So if you are looking for someone who can paint murals, who can paint you a picture, as an artist, as a faux finisher, and so many other creative things, where can people find you, Chris?
You can always email me, Liechti, so CLIECHTI @comcast.net would be the easiest way, or get a hold of me through John.
Awesome. All right, I'll put that in the little notes that go on below the episode. And yeah, that's it for today for the Breakthrough Creative. I am so grateful you were my guest, Chris.
I was glad to be here.
You rock. And you know, my takeaways from this episode are get busy figuring out what it is that you want to do creatively. Look for projects and work that are going to further the particular focus that you have for your art and for your career. You got to dream that career ahead of time, and you've got to give yourself the freedom to pivot in the midst of that too, so that if it's not working this way, or it's not necessarily want to go, you can turn that rudder a little bit, and then you're going to run into people who are going to change your life for the better. They're going to make your life richer, and they are going to do things that complement what it is that you do in your business, that are just going to make you look like a rock star. And Chris has made me look like a rock star so many times. And then you get these people in your life who they become part of your family. So keep an eye out for those people, because they're so important. And then I want you to get busy about the business of figuring out what you need to do next to make your creative living, your creative experience in your business even better, okay? And so until next time, for the Breakthrough Creative, I'm John McDavitt, and we'll see you then. Cheers.